If you know me or if you've seen my videos before, you know I'm definitely categorized more as a collector than a gamer, with me frequently saying things like, oh, I'm not going to play it anyway whenever I get something neat or silly or in Japanese or whatever it might be. I'm a severe creature of habit, so trying new things, trying new games sometimes creates some anxiety in me. But in August, I went bananas. Literally. I had 2 weeks off from work, so as part of my staycation, I took the time to play some games I've never played or have never beaten, and to varying levels of completion, I beat a whopping 7 games this month. Kind of 8, but we'll get to that. So to do something a little different, I just want to go over all of those games that I played. I actually talked about this first game in this past summer in review, but the first game I played in August was Donkey Kong Bonanza. The second Switch 2 title I own, Bonanza completely blew me out of the water in comparison to Mario Kart World. If you recall, I didn't have very nice things to say about that like a month or so ago, but Bonanza? Oh, we love this. I don't want to say a super ton because there may or may not be a video in the near future about Bonanza, but just know 1, this game is fantastic, and if you're buying a Switch 2 and only one game, buy this. It is leagues better than Mario Kart World. And 2, as someone who has played like one 3D platformer his entire life, I thoroughly enjoyed this and I'm definitely glad to have played it. It obviously took me a couple days to play through Bonanza, but I beat it on August 13th, which was the first day of my vacation. Either that day or the day after, I began Pokemon X. You obviously know I'm a huge Pokemon fan, but as the story goes that I've told quite a few times on this channel, I had a long Pokemon hiatus between generations 4 and 9, so I missed out on Unova, Kalos, Alola, and Galar. Last year I played through all the Generation 5 games, and this year, with Pokemon Legends ZA on its way in October, I decided to play through the story of Pokemon X and Y, since ZA will be set in Lumio City, which is basically the central area of Generation 6. Whether I started it on the 13th or on the 14th, I beat the game way too quickly. Granted, it's a game meant for kids. Most of the games in this video are suitable for kids, but even as a brand new region for me, I still beat the Elite Four in under 48 hours, which is definitely a testament to how linear the games are. I personally like lots of linearity in my games. Having too many things available at once kind of stresses me out too, but like X and Y are very, very linear. All in all, I actually really liked Pokemon X, even though I can definitely see why it is generally not well liked. The story is a serious nothing burger. There is so little content in comparison to its Black 2 and White 2 predecessors, but as a Pokemon fan, I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'm glad I got to play it before ZA. Also, I'm typically a super completionist in my games, so as it pertains to Pokemon, I usually go out of my way and will spend weeks completing the game's Pokedex across different cartridges and trading between games and what have you. But this time around, I was content to just play through it and max out my decks on cartridge, and that was it. I think there are technically a little bit more, but I got the maximum 416 Pokemon that appear normally in the game out of 721 Pokemon available through the first 6 generations. So if I ever wanted to complete the Gen 6 decks, I at least have X done. But that's also kind of be a theme in this video, that I valued completing a game over trying to do absolutely everything possible. So there's some character development for me there too. For example, in Donkey Kong Bonanza, I collected only like 180 bananas out of a possible like 777, 1,000, something like that. So there you go. In Pokemon X, I clocked about 64 hours in under a week. Also maxed out my rank in the Battle Chateau, so that was cool. But also, I didn't really get to understand where people's obsession with Mega Evolutions came from, so I mean, whatever, I guess. Gen 6 Pokemon is cool, but let's move on. I'm not really embarrassed by there being a Pokemon game I haven't played, but I am quite embarrassed by the next one. I've played months worth of Pokemon, but Pokemon X was brand new to me. I've played Donkey Kong Country games before, but Bonanza is a brand new game entirely. I've played the original Super Mario Bros., but I've never actually beaten it before. So the third thing I did in August was actually beat the original Super Mario Bros., specifically on original hardware on an NES. Not that I had ever done it before on any hardware to begin with, but the only way I've ever officially played the original Super Mario Bros. was on my Game Boy Advance under the classic NES series line of games. But honestly, my dad did most of the heavy lifting playing that because he played it before when it originally came out. He knew all the hidden warps and one-ups and all that, but I, personally, had never beaten it, not even on Game Boy Advance. I knew some of the basic tips and tricks, like the main 1-2 warp, but late game, not a damn clue. So, I decided to beat it for the first time on the NES, but I was only able to do so with a certain mechanic, we'll call it. I don't know exactly what it is, but basically, when I went to Too Many Games in June and sat on the Pat the NES Punks panel, I learned that after you game over, if you hold A, then press start, it puts you back on the world you last died on, and that made a world of difference, no pun intended. Instead of starting over from World 1 when I die on World 8, I was able to restart at the start of World 8, and honestly, if it wasn't for that, I probably wouldn't have done it. Even with that, it took several hours. So much time that I ran out of space capturing video, so I just said, screw it. Let me just play it and stop worrying about footage. It took me breaking out a Japanese guidebook that I had, video coming soon potentially, but I finally did it. No idea how long it actually took, but we're talking on and off like 6 hours maybe. I even forgot to eat breakfast and lunch, so that's how gamer I was to complete this. Whatever the case is, I know it's a little embarrassing that I literally have never beaten the most iconic video game of all time, especially as a game collector, but I'm actually proud of myself for finally doing it and doing it within the limitations, quote unquote, of the NES. I could have done it on Switch Online with save states, but nah. The next game I similarly sped through, and it's actually a compilation of 2 games, hence why it's kind of 8 games I played through, but across 7 cartridges. Anyway, I don't know what possessed me to start it, but the Klonoa Fantasy Reverie series was in a Nintendo Direct a couple years ago, and I was like, oh, I like that. I like that gameplay. So I got it shortly after release, and it has since sat on my shelf for at least a year. This is a compilation of 2 games, Klonoa Door to Phantomile, which is the first game in the series, and Klonoa 2, Lunatea's Veil. It took me 3 days to beat both, but let me talk about them separately. Klonoa 1 and 2 are both 2D puzzle platformers, linearity, and this compilation is basically a remaster of both. I don't think any gameplay is different, it's just entirely visuals, but I think they're both quite cute. Klonoa 1 was originally a PS1 game, an extremely expensive one here in North America at that, and this took me about 12 hours to get through the whole thing. Albeit I went to a baseball game within those 12 hours, but the game is honestly what I think something like Nights into Dreams looks like, though I'm probably totally wrong, but you play as this little guy, Klonoa, just platforming and solving puzzles, and I love it. I grew up playing Frogger's Adventures The Rescue, and the level of puzzling in that is similar to the level of puzzling in Klonoa, so it kind of just felt like a fun, easy game to play through, which was nice. The bosses are not difficult at all, and I don't know if the original gave as much hand-holding, but this one has great accessibility options, and the same is true for Klonoa 2. So that made this a lot easier to just relax with. I seem to remember the story in Klonoa 1 being better than Klonoa 2, though it's been a week and I don't really remember it. I just remember that Klonoa 1 is pretty short, but the final boss has 3 super epic phases, so even if this was a standalone remake release, I would totally recommend playing this. A lot of what I just said for Door to Phantomile can be said for Klonoa 2, but just some small differences. For one, Klonoa 2 is way longer than 1. There are more levels, the levels are longer, and I would say this is pretty expected since Klonoa 2 was originally a PS2 sequel to the first one, so the game was naturally more fleshed out. Those long levels were pretty rewarding when you did finally finish, but just like the first one, the bosses aren't the most difficult, for better or worse, and in this case the ending boss sucks in comparison to the first one though, so that was very unrewarding, but anyway. I didn't really pay attention to the story here, but the ending was really sad, and I didn't know it was the ending, so when the credits rolled I was like, wait, what? That's it? Overall, for someone not really into this genre of puzzle games, this game was awesome, and if there's one game I had to recommend on this list, it might be this compilation, so definitely go pick it up if you can. You will not be disappointed. There were also a lot more collectibles I didn't take the time to get, so there's that recurring theme again. The next one is a weird one because there is so little info on this out there, and there's like one completed speedrun on speedrun.com. Like, the heck? Another game I once saw in a Nintendo Direct is Super Crazy Rhythm Castle, which is a hectic rhythm game where you're either solving puzzles or dealing with distractions while you do the rhythm part, and this one is just hard to describe. Overall, I liked this game, but how I rate it, I'm not really sure. The game is by Konami, has several references to Konami series, but it's like pretty unforgiving at points. So not that I'm like the best gamer ever, but some of the puzzles I was like genuinely lost on and had to look for a guide, to which there's like none online. Klonoa, I looked up a guide maybe twice when I was in a pinch, but this, yeah, it had me beat in a lot of spots. My only main critique of the game is that it felt like the rhythm part of some of the levels felt like less than half of the actual level. So I was hoping for more rhythm, but that's really not the biggest of deals. And honestly, maybe it's just my perception, but it has some pretty funny dialoguing spots. The music is also absolutely fire all throughout. So overall, I think if you like rhythm games, if you like some anxiety-inducing distractions, and just overall the title is accurate, Super Crazy Rhythm Castle, I think you'll like this game. I don't know if there's a demo out there, but this game is apparently $5 on the Switch eShop right now until September 12th. So I definitely think it's worth going to get at that price. I got the main ending within 24 hours, but when I saw the requirements to get the true ending, I was like, nah, screw that, and moved on. I did enjoy my time with it, though, and I've already convinced one person to buy it, so we might be doing some of the levels co-op, which was a fun alternate way of playing through it. What I then moved on to, though, I don't know where or when exactly this game climbed the popularity leaderboards, but if you're in the gaming space and haven't heard of Balatro by now, you should just go play it. Alex Olney on Nintendo Life and someone at my work both said this game is wildly addicting. It's a card game where you're sort of gambling by spending money on upgrades, and once you lose, you start completely from scratch. I don't know exactly how to describe it, but it's very based in the poker realm, which I was taught to play from a young age, so I was like, oh, okay, cool, an addicting casino sim, as if those didn't already exist on Nintendo platforms. And so I decided to see what the hype was all about, and hype this game is. It took me a little bit to get the hang of what I was supposed to do, but once I figured it out, once I saw the multipliers make my score go absurdly high, I was hooked. Everything people have said about Balatro is completely true, so this is one of my new favorite games. I had to pull it out of my Switch to play the next game, but as I'm writing this script, Balatro is literally calling my name. My number one recommendation in this video is the Klonoa Fantasy Reverie series, but Balatro isn't far behind whatsoever. Just know that if you play it and give it a proper chance, you're gonna get hooked. I promise. So make time for yourself. Let's move on to the last game before I glaze it more and decide to play it instead of actually making this video. I beat Donkey Kong Bonanza on August 13th, and I played my last bit of Balatro on August 27th. So in 2 weeks, we played through 6-7 different games, and seeing my progress through the month, I challenged myself to beat one more game. So to end the month, we played a game you're probably not expecting. Take a wild guess, literally any guess. If you guessed Talking Super Jeopardy on the NES, you'd be wrong. I played Pac-Man World Repack. This game has been on my backlog for a while, but basically, when I was a kid, there was a grocery store chain a few towns over that my mom would go to, and for some reason they had like a full play place, like basically a daycare for parents to drop their kids off while they did the grocery shopping, and this place was like actually huge. In said play place, there was a PS2, and at this time, I had a PS2, so little Max was like, I have that at home, I'm gonna play that. And one day, there was the original Pac-Man World on PS1 in it, so I played that. Kids don't care what game they're playing, and I couldn't have played this for more than like 15 minutes, but I remember playing it so vividly that I had to get this game when I started collecting. Why I didn't just get it as a kid, I have no idea, but I bought it on PS1 a few years ago and never had a chance to play it. But lo and behold, this remake was in another Nintendo Direct a few years ago, which, side note, I checked, and all 3 games I said were in Nintendo Directs were in 3 different Directs, so I thought that was funny. But I was like, I have to get that remake. It ended up being like $20 or something cheap on Black Friday, so I picked it up then. But as a way to get myself off of Balatro before it was all of a sudden 2026, I decided to take care of this. Regarding the game, I'm going to be super real. I wrote the first part of this script, then played Pac-Man World, and I beat it in one 5-hour sitting. And now I'm back to writing this script. Overall, though, I liked it a lot. The graphics get a pretty nice update over the PS1 version, which is great, especially considering that I'm not nostalgic or even really a fan of PS1 and N64 era graphics. So that was good, but also it's a very nice, very simple platforming experience. It's kind of interesting though, because this and the Klonoa collection have a few similarities. For one, these were both done by Bandai Namco, so the title screens, the accessibility changes for the respective remakes, even Klonoa's and Pac-Man's Flutter Jump, stuff like that, they're both very similar, so I thought that was kind of funny. I think Klonoa had better hand-holding and was more true to the original in terms of gameplay, whereas Pac-Man World has some gameplay updates and changes, but I also think the Klonoa remakes came out after this Pac-Man World remake, so that's that, but that's not to say I really needed help. Like I said, I looked for help in Klonoa like twice because I was in a pinch, but this one, I didn't look anything up at all. In that aforementioned grocery store, I probably never made it through the first 2 levels, if that, but I obviously sped through this, playing in 5 hours, and I think my platforming looks seasoned enough that you would think I have played through it before, but nope, just a good little experience, and I'm glad I finally played through Pac-Man World. In under 5 hours, I got about 76%, so I could go back and 100% it, but I'm also thinking about doing it on PS1, but let's focus on other stuff first. I will say, though, there's also a Galaxian level. Galaxian and Galaga were also done by Namco, and this has to be one of my favorite levels in a video game ever. Just look it up. It is gorgeous. I think it's a great kids-first platformer all around. It's not difficult in the slightest. Pac-Man is so recognizable, and yeah, I'd recommend this if it sounds at all up your alley, but even if it's not, it's still worth a play for how nice and basic it is. The only thing I'd say is that it's a 3D platformer in basically 2D space, whereas Klonoa is 3D modeling, but in strictly 2D platforming. And the one thing I cannot stand about platformers like this is that it is so easy to just miss platforms you jump on because of depth perception. Like, I thought I was right on some of my jumps, and they ended up being completely off the mark. Granted, I'm not a great gamer, but that's something that's haunted me, even in my favorite games like Ape Escape 2, so I'll cry about that later. Overall, it was a really good month of gaming for me, and even if I can't keep up the pace since my vacation is now over, I do feel like I broke down a wall of being afraid to try new games, so I want to try and do better for the rest of the year and definitely into 2026. Going forward, like I said, I might be doing some co-op in Super Crazy Rhythm Castle, I might get sucked back into Balatro, but my goal for this week-ish is to play through Dokapon Sword of Fury, which is yet another remake of a PS1 game. It was released physically only in Japan. I have it, but it also has an English patch, so I'll probably be doing that. If you want a different Dokapon game than Dokapon Kingdom, as you have heard me talk about every single week, it's on the eShop and on Steam. I also want to pick up the Switch 2 edition of Kirby and the Forgotten Land, which just came out, so I'll let you know how that goes. In summary, play Donkey Kong Bonanza if you have a Switch 2 and somehow haven't played it. Get the Klonoa Fantasy Reverie series on any modern system, and don't get too hooked on Balatro like me.